Last week you did a few practice activities related to dot plots and line plots, and you also were introduced to something called histograms. A histogram displays continuous numerical data in intervals. So in a histogram, there must be two things. Number one, there must be something called intervals. I also like to call them the buckets. Buckets or intervals. They're both the same, but buckets is a more fun name. And the second rule for histograms is that the bars must always be touching. So if we look here to the right at our first example, we see a histogram with age from 20 to 100, and we see frequency on our y-axis. And you notice there are bars created that are right up against one another, and they are not overlapping. So the intervals must be equal, not overlapping, and must contain all of the data points. So we know that the data included the number 20 all the way up to the number 100 and all the numbers in between. And notice our intervals here are from 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90, and 90 to 100. So we notice that the space between each of these bars would be 10. And in this case, it would be 10 years because we're talking about age. So that's what I mean by intervals, or we call them the buckets that are filled with the same amount. So we're going to practice, and this is on page 11 of your math packet if you haven't gotten that out yet. So take a minute now, either pause the video to get the packet out or ask Mrs. Thomas for the math packet if you don't have it with you. And you will fill in the notes as we go through the 4 different steps to create our very own histogram. So step number 1 to create a histogram is to determine the range of the data of intervals. So what that means is we're going to take the smallest number of the data, and then we're going to find the largest number in our data. Kind of like the example up top, how it included number 20 all the way up to 100. That's what we want to find. We want to find that range. So if I look in my data, here's my box here. My title is TikTok video likes in the millions. So that number 86 represents 86 millions, and then the number 70 represents 70 millions, and so forth. So I'm going to look for the smallest number in this data. So if I scan the data, it looks like 40 million is going to be my smallest. So I'm going to write that on the blank for step number 1. That's my smallest. And then to find a range, I'm going to put a dash mark in it to show that 40 is the smallest, but it ranges from 40 all the way up to the largest number, which according to the data points is the number 95. So that's step number 1. We always want to find the range of the smallest to the largest numbers and everything in between. Step number 2 is to fill out a frequency tally table. So we're going to figure out how many buckets or intervals that we have between this data. So it's ranging from 40 to 95. I'm going to pick an interval, just like above where we did every 10. I'm going to pick an interval, and it must be equal to separate my data into. So I'm going to choose, just from the example above, I'm going to also do another interval or buckets filled with 10. So I'm going to do my first bucket, which would be my x-axis, and that would be from 40 to 50. Okay, so it's a 10 million range. And I'm going to go all the way up until I get to 95 or more. So my next range or my next bucket would be 51 to 61. And then 62 to 72. 73 to 83. And then I can't stop at 94 because I have data that's larger than 94. So I have to write the range 94 to 104. Even though there's not 104 in our data, I still need to include it. Okay? So that's step number 2, is to fill in our bucket table or our frequency table. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look through my data, and I'm going to see how many times the numbers 40 to 50, anywhere in between there, come up in my data. So if I scan through my likes here, it looks like I have 40 And that's it. So I'm going to cross off 40, and you should do the same in your packet. And I'm going to write one frequency tally, meaning there's only one number between 40 and 50 that's listed in my data. So on my y-axis, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which will be our frequency, I would just include frequency 1. Okay, so my next range, or my next bucket, is between 51 and 61. So I'm going to look through my data and find all the numbers that are between 51 and 61. I see 51, and I see 49. Oh wait, I missed 49. 49 needs to go on this one. That's totally my fault. So that's going to be 2 here, and cross off 49. That was totally my fault. I totally missed that. So 55, and it looks like we don't have anything else, just 55. So I'm going to cross off 55. That means I have one frequency, and it's going to be the number 1 on my y-axis. 62 to 72, I see the number, oh my word, I am slacking really bad. There's 60 also. I can't believe I missed that again. Oh, yay. I'm not very good at this. 62 to 72. So I see the number 62. So that's 1, 2. All right. 3 and 4. And I think that's it. I think Mrs. Thomas actually got it right this time. 4 tallies and the number 4. My range between 73 and 83, I have the number 77. And that's it. So that's 1. Which means my last range, which I totally missed this range here, 84 to 94, and then 95 to 105. I'm making this video on a Friday afternoon, just so you know, so that's why my brain is very foggy, and I'm very tired. So I apologize for getting basically all of this wrong so far. Between 84 and 94 is 84, 86, and 86, so that would be 3. And then the last one would just include the number 95, which would be 1. Okay, let's see if I can actually graph our histogram correctly. I'm going to make it larger over here so you can see it. Okay, my next step, step number 3, is to label my y-axis and my x-axis. So my y-axis is always in a histogram on the y-axis, frequency, always. Okay, so we're going to label frequency, which you'll just write it right here. And then below here, I'm going to write TikTok video likes in millions. Okay, so make sure you give yourself enough space to also be able to fill in your numbers. So I'm going to count the number of buckets that I have. So I have 40 to 50, 51 to 61, 62 to 72, 73 to 83, 84 to 94, and 95 to 105. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 total buckets. So that means I'm going to break this into 6 equal parts, because that's how many graphs or bars I'm going to be creating. So in between each of those intervals or those buckets, I'm going to label them. And you should be doing the same in your packet. So 40 to 50, 51 to 61, 62 to 72, 73 to 83, 84 to 94, 95 to 105, and those are my intervals. My frequencies, they go from 1 up all the way to 4. So what I need to do is to break this into 4 equal parts, and that represents the 4 different frequencies. Okay, so I am also making sure I include a range of my smallest to my largest number. So that's what my frequency should look like, and that is what my x-axis should look like. So now I'm going to create my bars, and you can do this with colored pencils, or if you just want to use a normal regular pencil, that's totally fine too. I like to use different colors. So now I'm going to create my bars. So between 4 and 5, my frequency is the number 2. So I'm going to go up to the number 2, come over all the way up to my y-axis, snug against it, and color it in. And that represents 2. I'm going to change colors here. I'll change it to purple. 51 to 61, my frequency is also 2. So I'm going to draw my line straight up and right up against my other graph. Remember, there's no gaps in a histogram. It needs to all be squished up against one another. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to go down through and look at my frequency tally. My next bucket is 62 to 72, and that has 4. That goes all the way up to the top 4. I'm not going to color in the whole thing and waste time, but you get kind of the gist of it. 73 to 83, my frequency is 1. Okay, and if you need to pause this video to draw your graphs and to color them in, you may absolutely do that. You don't need to quickly scribble everything like I'm doing. I'm just showing you an example. 84 to 94 is our next bucket, and that frequency is 3. So it's going to go up to 3 and over, and then color it in. And then my last one is going to be 95 to 105, and that frequency is also 3. Okay, so 3, 3, 1, 4. And there's my beautiful looking histogram. Yours will look much nicer. It'll either be colored or written much nicer than this. But you get the gist of it. You get the idea of especially labeling the x and the y-axis. It's super important. And then making sure our bars do not overlap at all and that they are touching at all times. So that is all we have to do for page 11 at this time. You're finished. You'll stop watching the video, finish up this page, and then you'll move on to the next activity.